thank you very much for getting up so early. Welcome to the Coutts Business School, with whom Editorial Intelligence has a very fruitful partnership. And that's what we do, is we bring people together like you to hear good ideas. And without further ado, it's my great pleasure to hand over to Evan Davis.
The nation has a challenge over the next 2 or 3 years. We've discovered that banking isn't quite as profitable internationally as we had thought. Never before have we needed our entrepreneurs to rebuild and fill the holes left in our economy by some of the bits that are not going to be as big or as profitable as we had thought they were. Let's, with no further ado, start with Lord Bell, Tim Bell.
Given I live in the world of slogans, I'm actually going to just rattle off a dozen slogans. Business is good, tax is bad and should be very low, redistribution can be good or bad, wealth creation is utterly good and the only thing worth spending your life doing. Responsibility is good and irresponsibility is bad. If you want a bigger cake, if you want a bigger slice, make a bigger cake. You may recognize some of these cliches and slogans. You shouldn't spend more than you earn. Debt is bad, but credit is good. Isn't that confusing? Because debt and credit are the same thing. Free has no value whatsoever, and growth is good. And what we should all be doing is trying to grow the economy and not spend the whole of our time trying to fund the NHS and overseas aid. That's my view.
Thank you very much indeed, Tim, for that provocative start. Gwyn Miles is director of the Somerset House Trust and joined the Somerset House Trust in 2006.
Well, basically, Somerset House was built on the site of a royal palace, and in the 19th century it acted as the centre for government administration, and we're trying to invigorate this as a 21st century palace for the people. You might be surprised to find me, a leader in an arts charity, on this platform, but the fact is the arts sector has had to become more entrepreneurial to survive. Over the last 25 years, this sector has changed massively, and government funding has had to be supplemented as arts organisations have found ways of earning money and attracting sponsorship. But what drives our economy is rental income, and our biggest tenant is still Inland Revenue, or Her Majesty's Revenue and Customs, and we also have the Courtauld. And this rental economy is essential for us to survive. We want to do it in such a way that we're a world-class home for innovation and creative enterprise. We believe we can do this in a way that encourages young entrepreneurs in the creative industries to set up shop in the centre of London and provide a genuinely inspiring new community. And then we want to provide the right environment for collaborative working, and we believe it's a really good thing for entrepreneurs to come to Somerset House.
Andrew Haig is our next speaker. Started life as an investment banker, joined Coutts 6 years ago, has recently returned, in fact, from creating a private bank in China, and is now the managing partner of the Entrepreneurs Client Group.
This is all about how we stimulate economic growth, and to me it's self-evident that entrepreneurship has to be a part of that, and there's no doubts about that. But I think there's a number of drivers, and I wanted to start and pick up on a point that you made that I think is counterintuitive, but actually recessions do help entrepreneurship. We all know that entrepreneurs are the ones that are the most adaptable and easy to change their business model in response to change circumstances, far better than large companies, which are a bit like ocean liners. Now, the new concept that is right for the times of social enterprise is something that I think that the government's putting a lot of money into now, but generally at the grassroots in terms of SME creation. There are a couple of risks, though, I think. The main one for me is that one of the things I think the UK is not good at is having a sense of vision and scale. We're not great at creating global businesses and thinking of that size. The other one is, I think, is that we need to get better at our implementation skills. There's no shortage of good ideas out there. It's actually about making them happen.
I mean, actually, Andrew, one of the interesting things that really makes recession's a good time for entrepreneurs is the opportunity cost of being an entrepreneur falls, isn't it? I mean, in the boom, you don't want to give up your good job because you're giving up quite a lot to become one, whereas if you've lost your job, I mean, this is really the time to have a go, isn't it? Thank you for that. Okay, next, René Carriel.
Two perspectives. The first thing is that we are so corrosively cynical in the UK that we were uniform about when we went into recession. Everyone was cheering, we're going into recession, we're going into recession. Getting out of recession, no one wants to stand up and say we're getting out. Without that, without optimism as a force multiplier, we're not going to get out of recession. So we're stuck there. Entrepreneurs are slightly different. I did a series for the BBC a few years ago called Mind of a Millionaire. And we tried to establish what is an entrepreneur. To make it easy for us, we define it as a self-made millionaire. And out of a population of 66 million in the UK, we found 70,000 self-made millionaires. Out of that 70,000, 49% were dyslexic. Now that was really interesting for us. Out of that 70,000, 59% came from a dysfunctional or deprived background. They took a disadvantage and made it into an advantage. And they drive no matter what. And historically, if we look at the mega fortunes in history, no mega fortune has been made outside of a recession, because they just don't give a toss about a recession. They're going to push anyway. I think these guys are driven, these guys and girls, are driven by different things. And my God, we need them in a recession, because they play by different rules. And they're not hit by the corrosive cynicism of are we in recession or out of a recession. They're just going to keep driving. Long may they rule.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
As I sit here, I think of the truth of what Winston Churchill said when he said, "We are two nations divided by a common language." I think an interesting statistic is that between 1987 and 2000, there were 20 companies in America that went from the garage to the Fortune 500. Billions. And there were 5 in all of Europe, including the UK. So what is it about culture? Do you live in a culture where failure is possible? Do you live in a culture where you should and be proud of shooting for the stars? And I find in America that is much more common. 90% of Americans appreciate people who get rich by hard work. I'm not sure what the goal, what the statistic would be here. And I think that that culture really does matter, and I think it's something to think about, and I think it's something to fight for.
Ronald.
Thank you very much, Evan. Since about 2000, we're beginning to see the creation of a wave of social entrepreneurship. So we had business entrepreneurship, and then people who applied methods, different methods to being successful in business, are now beginning to apply them to the achievement of social issues. And so focusing flows of capital into poorer areas of Britain will lead not only to the creation of jobs, not only to the creation of role models which are going to be beacons for others. It'll begin to touch something that is fundamental to our society, which is the fairness of the system. All the stuff we read about bonuses and about wealth and all the rest of it, has to do with the fact that if you have a high growth society with low tax rates, the gap between rich and poor gets bigger and bigger. And while the capitalist system deals with its economic consequences and its financial consequences, it doesn't deal with its social consequences. But I think one of the things that we've got to nurture is a social entrepreneurial spirit in Britain. And it requires the creation of a structure to support social entrepreneurship, similar to that we put in place in order to support business entrepreneurship.
My question was around media and the influence that the media have on entrepreneurship. Does the media help or hinder?
I think the people are smarter than the media, but the politicians are not. And the politicians get sucked in. And I think that's why it's really dangerous.
How do you sort of scale something that's working and get it sort of into a bigger thing? And is it with government or what?
The banks, we all know where that is and about them seed-corning that. But clearly in a recession, the risks for the bank go up on lending to small businesses. There's no shadow doubt. So there's a whole load around us that says we've got issues to put across.
And I think this is where the social entrepreneurship comes in. The social entrepreneurship comes into saying we are now going to create ways in which organizations that have a social mission, like the Prince's Trust, can actually raise money through the capital markets. They can raise a bond, they can raise equity, even though they're not for profit.